Welcome back to another episode of Nihon Rush Hour. It's your boy Caesar, man. I was thinking today how in hip hop, a lot of albums sound the same. And I don't mean this literally, but most of the time, artists tend to operate within the same creative boundaries. A Drake album, for example, will always carry these familiar hallmarks in its production, flows, melodies, and even subject matter. And these things are echoed in all his other works. This isn't necessarily negative. In fact, it's part of what makes Drake so recognizable. It also means artists can become caricatures of themselves, catering to what their fan base expects as a standard. But some artists are different. Some artists are unpredictable. And in Japanese hip hop, I think one of the clearest examples of that unpredictability is Jin Menasagi. Across more than a decade, Jin Menasagi's discography refuses to stay in one lane. I mean, his sound moves from lo-fi internet rap to boom bap to jazz soul collaborations to fully self-produced drill cinematic albums. I mean, he's the kind of artist where you never quite know what the next project will sound like, but you know it will still feel unmistakably his. Jim Nasagi really developed a name for himself in the net rap scene in the early 2010s. I mean, uploading tracks on Nico Nico, he quickly built a following for his unique lyricism and experimental production choices. And this can be seen in albums like Self Ghost, Me Too, and Tadai, which really helped him establish his style. Self Ghost, released in 2012, came at a time when Jim Asagi was still trying to find his identity, both musical and personal. It was a very raw album with lo-fi mixes, unpolished beats, and a kind of bedroom rap intimacy. The production leaned on hazy atmosphere, distorted textures, and minimal polish, more about mood than clarity, and this was even reflected in the lyricism. Often, Jim Nasagi would make these obscure references and use rhyme schemes that a casual listener might not be able to follow. And Jim Nasagi, being young and inexperienced, really did play a part in the experimental nature of the album.
Yeah, that is basically why Self Goals, the production is a little bit different. And I can say it's kind of out of theory.
Mhm.
Yeah. When you make hip hop sound, it really needs to be organized in hip hop theory. So yeah, that's the reason, I guess.
A few months later, he arrived with Me Too, with a noticeably different sonic palette. Moving away from the lo-fi sounds of Self Ghost and more towards a cloud rap and trap sound. The beats were more polished, they were slightly brighter, and mixed elements of electronic and digital sounds, as well as some dissonant samples. The arrangements with the 808s gave it more bounce and more rhythm, and the lyrics were more digestible for the audience. Then in 2013, he releases Tanai, and he pivots again. The production grew darker and more surreal, layering the cloud rap sound and trill wave elements with thick bass, reverb-heavy synths, and an eerie, almost womb-like atmospheres. And the production complemented the themes and the subject matter of the album perfectly, matching the dark and pessimistic tone of Jim Asagi as he warns the listener about the dangers of being chronically online, telling the listener to get off the internet. Critics at the time described it as a fusion of Self Ghost's earthiness and Me Too's glamour, but with a more refined sense of space and texture. And taken together, these first three records highlight how Jim Asagi never locked into one sound. Each release was a new experiment in production style and concept and lyricism, showing that his diversity wasn't just lyrical, it was baked into the sonics from day one. In 2014, Jim Asagi was facing a big problem. I mean, his music was great, but it wasn't resonating with the Japanese audience. This meant that he had to evolve. He had to study trends and create music that would resonate with the Japanese demographic.
Sales, it wasn't good. So yeah, after that, I learned um, what is trending in Japanese market. It's a little bit different because Japanese hip hop listeners really love to listen to boom bap sound, like authentic sounds.
So naturally, for his 2014 album LXVE, Jimmy Nasagi decided to go with boom bap, working with producers like Ito, Prostate, Pigeon Dust, and many more. The range of producers gave the record a variety of textures rooted in the authentic sounds of boom bap. Sample-based beats, drum break loops, and aggressive, hard-hitting percussion juxtaposed with Jimmy Nasagi's vulnerable and emotional introspection. With sharp technical flows and melodies, this was a complete album with a really fleshed out concept about a person living in Tokyo dealing with an existential question of what it means to live or to love in a city that at times makes you feel numb to emotions and to experiences. Jimmy Nasagi tackles this question beautifully and really solidified himself as one of the most imaginative artists in Tokyo's underground. Then came 2015's Jimmy Nasagi. This was Jimmy Nasagi's first independent release after leaving his label Lo-Hi Who, an album which he put out on his own label. Given the success of LXVE, naturally, a good follow-up would be an album in a similar style, right? Wrong. Maybe for a regular artist, but not for Jimmy Nasagi, man. Listen, this album had a heavy trap influence. You could just hear it in its drum programming, the flow and delivery. It had a very bare bones, stripped down beat structure. Especially compared to his earlier work, him rapping lazily over these simple beats with rough lyrics had a very dark horror mood. It even drew comparisons to the atmospheres of Vince Staples' music. In both sound and structure, this really marked a turning point for Jimmy Nasagi, establishing him as an independent artist while also opening his music to a wider audience, especially with features from artists like Sida. In the following year, Jimmy Nasagi releases a collaborative project with producer and friend Dubby Maple. This was like a complete 180 from the previous album. Listen, this guy goes from trap-heavy influence sounds, right, to EDM. An album with an experimental blend of electronic music and hip-hop. Just from one listen, you could just tell what he was trying to do on this album. The goal was speed. It felt like a feeding frenzy, often pushing into harsher and faster sonic territory than any of his earlier lo-fi or cloud rap aesthetics. People even describe the album's subject matter as focused on speed, pressure, and the pace of contemporary life. And this was reflected in the way the hi-hats were programmed, the glitchy textures, and the aggressive synth layers. Hayai was almost like a bridge between the darker elements of Jimmy Nasagi and more of the expansive and experimental albums that follow from here. We're only halfway through this discography, and you can't deny how insane this is. But maybe I'm just being ignorant. Maybe this is a very common thing in Japanese hip-hop, but I just can't think of too many artists that can seamlessly glide between all these different hip-hop subgenres without really missing a beat, without really losing their identity. XXX Tentacion, MF Doom, Outkast. These are just a few I could think of right now, but there's not many. And Jimmy Nasagi is definitely one of them. And the fact that he produces his own music probably helps him retain his originality when he takes on these endeavors into different genres. Following the electronic and fast-paced Hayai, Jimmy Nasagi decided to take us out of space with his 2017 release, Eternal Timer. Let me just tell you, this was like a cosmic adventure. Eternal Timer explores the passage of time and a sense of dreamlike detachment, so the production really reflected this, with its more relaxed and softer instrumentals and a lot of space in the arrangements. So it had a real funky yet laid-back finish, and at times you would hear this sort of grungy element to it. And within this setting, Jim Asagi adjusted his delivery to a lighter, sort of playful tone, while maintaining his distinctive cadence, but he could show you how well he could shift into more meditative and reflective sonic environments. And this is what I mean. Like, who does this? Who do you know that does this, man? Jim Asagi, the rapper that could go from lo-fi to cloud rap to trap to boom bap to electronic. And now he's going into this sort of experimental, funky, atmospheric genre. Back to back to back to back. I mean, this guy is so amazing. The following year brought La Blanca, a full collaboration with Sweet William. And here, the sound leaned heavily into jazz, soul-inspired production, with smooth tempos, warm piano-driven beats, and a strong emphasis on melody. And you can note the contrast between this mellow, organic instrumentation and Jim Asagi's rapping, and this gave it sort of this cool juxtaposition. The combination was often compared to the atmospheres of Nujabes, showing another dimension of his sonic range, showing a sort of maybe even romantic side to him on this album. Following a long hiatus, Jim Asagi returned in 2023 with Dong Jing Ren. I mean, this album was produced entirely by Jim Asagi himself under his alias Lee Young. And like LXVE, this was another concept album centered around a person living in Tokyo. This was Jim Asagi at his most mature, vulnerable, and honest, with songs like Crying Face Emoji that can give you goosebumps, and Sakuraba with its ironic and funny yet very raw and honest introspective lyrics. It really felt like Jim Asagi was rapping from the perspective of a Tokyo person, that you could walk in his shoes and experience what Tokyo is like through his lenses. But unlike LXVE, which was a boom bap album, this was a drill album, man. Completely built around and influenced by drill production. Him crafting his own drum and sound materials, sometimes processed through gear like Yamaha SU200s, to ensure the consistency in the sonic texture. The album was described as a world standard Asian drill album, with a deluxe edition featuring artists like Bombero, Crafty Kid, Hideyoshi, Mummy D, Juma Diva. I mean, this album really connected the young and older voices in the scene. But this really showed Jim Asagi's identity and his ability to study genres, master them, and then produce amazing works that become so relatable. What's amazing is that most artists, not just in hip-hop, but in music in general, make an entire career out of just one subgenre. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually normal and it's expected. And the music is usually great, but it's really cool and rare to find someone like Jim Asagi that can cross over into all these different creative spaces and still do it at a high level and maybe even bring something new to the table. From lo-fi to cloud rap beats to trap to boom bap to experimental projects like Hayai to cosmic collaborations on Eternal Timer to jazz soul textures on La Blanca to fully self-produced drill projects, and even a lo-fi beat tape that he released recently under Lee Young. I mean, Jim Asagi's discography demonstrates a consistent pattern of sonic diversity that is unlike any other. Across his career, critics and collaborators alike have highlighted not only his adaptability as a rapper, but also his growth into a producer, shaping the sound of Japanese hip-hop. And in my opinion, he's also one of the most relatable Japanese artists from the perspective of a North American listener. And it's not just because of his ability to use English in his lyrics or his relatable subject matter, but it's the fact that he can cross over seamlessly into genres that are making waves overseas, study them, and then create something original and bring something different to the table. And that's why I think Jim Asagi has the most diverse discography in Japanese hip-hop, and maybe in hip-hop in general. And that's your host, Caesar, man. That was Nihon Rush Hour. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, share. I'll see you next time. Peace.
No excuse, no excuse. Get the bag, can't complain. This on use, no cutting slack.